Richboro Elementary could be considered for beneficial reuse instead of tearing it down. A charter school for out-of-jurisdiction students, perhaps. More importantly, an autistic support school to take the burden off the special needs, autistic and special needs support, to take the burden off the regular classroom so that everyone gets the level of education they need. All special needs support and staff be centered out of this school. This would also allow the school property to remain open for various community activities, athletic programs, and events. I would also like to say that Spring Valley Farm West, which borders Richboro Elementary on two sides, I would feel that the average age of the household there is 64 years old. You have a lot of people there that are going to be moving in the next few years. I feel that you're dealing with, you're in a tough spot right now, but you have a population that is perhaps on at a point of where it's going to move. And I hope that you're considering this. What I observe is that the new families coming into the neighborhood have 1 to 3 children, but again, the average age of the population is probably about 64 years old, and this represents 92 households right around Richboro Middle School. Thank you very much.
Next person, anyone else like to speak? If you guys could line up if you'd like to speak so we can see who is the number of people. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Stephanie Marriott Harris, and I thank you for the chance to talk to the school board tonight. I did come to a school board meeting a few weeks ago and made mention of one of my concerns with regard to the Pennsylvania Economic League report. As you may recall, when I introduced myself a few weeks ago, I'm an economist by training, and my point tonight, as I reiterated previously, is that the Pennsylvania Economic League report did very detailed analyses, but did not do projections that account for the economic cycle that Bucks County and the entire country has been through. And the specific factors that they looked at with regard to birth rates as well as housing trends did not look forward to what happens as the economy begins to move out of the Great Recession. And so it is with some caution that I would advise you that as you consider enrollment numbers, because of course birth rates and housing trends are exactly the things that we should be looking at as we look at enrollment numbers going forward, that in fact the upswing in the economy is going to have an impact on those numbers. And what I brought tonight to share are the pieces of data on which I base that supposition. I don't think it's a very difficult supposition to base, but basically what we see is that the U.S. birth rates show a strong correlation with GDP and unemployment rate. And as you've heard in the news, all of those factors are moving up. So the chart that I brought with me from the Pew Research Center shows the growth in birth rates that occurred after the 2001 recession. And not surprisingly, it shows a decline in the birth rates following the start of the 2008 recession. So birth rates indeed will follow the economic cycle and the economic recovery that we're seeing today. The other piece of data, and there's much more detailed data than is my area of
usually loud. You want me to be loud? All right. Jenny Shawmiller from Wrightstown. Did you get what I said before, or just talk louder? Okay. Okay. In your charge to the Capital Planning Committee, it says, we are assembling a committee to address our facilities, using our facilities in the most efficient and effective ways consistent with our current educational policies and procedures. I went back and looked at that for myself because what I'm trying to do when I come out as a community member is be helpful to the process. A couple things really strike me about the recommendations. One is there's some trade-offs, some really important trade-offs that come with the recommendations that have been presented to you. Recommendation 1 really strives to do a 700 student model, which I think is very difficult with the schools that you have. 5 of your 10 schools in the elementary level can't even hold 600 students. They do this by investing $10 million in additional capital over and above what you already have to do to expand Hillcrest and Richboro so that you can close 2 of your smaller schools. So they do this after those expenditures are made, after those schools are improved and enlarged. Not until 2019 and 2020 could you even close a school under this plan. And because you're outlaying $10 million up front, the savings that you realize, you're not going to have net savings for another probably 10 years because you have to recoup the cost that you just paid. Parity among the schools would still be elusive because you still have one very small and 2 really large schools. So I don't believe that it actually achieves a 700 student school. Again, it's just a trade-off. There is some good things in that recommendation. Obviously, a lot of work went into it. Recommendation 2 says use your existing space. As a taxpayer, I like that idea because I think you're already having to spend so much. The problem I have with recommendation 2 is that it says put dividers up in classrooms so that you can remove your trailers. Well, when you do that, many of your classrooms will not be the minimum 660 square feet that I learned watching some old previous board meetings that you need in a classroom at the elementary level. In addition, there'd be overcrowding at Newtown Elementary beyond your peak capacity. If you look at recommendation 2, although they obviously put so much work into that document, and I think this is a simple mistake to make, they lost 69 students. And if you look at how many students they're adding to Newtown and Goodnoe and Richboro, it's only 251 students. There's 328 right now at Wrightstown. When you add those students in, Newtown would be crowded beyond what it was even at its peak. If you consider the proposal I've talked about before to create 5th and 6th grade, you take the same number of students, you could have your same academic program if you wanted, with more efficient use of space, something you said you're looking for. With better utilization of staff resources, your most expensive resources are your buildings and your teachers. If you better utilize your building space and your teachers, I think that's better for all of us. I gave an example on this page that I handed out, and I have some for the community if they're interested, that shows with the same number of students in just looking at 5th grade, you would go from 33 sections to 29. You would have those classrooms right now that are at June 2014 are 84% capacity because some classrooms had 20 or 21 kids in a classroom that could hold 30. You now would have your classrooms at that 5th grade level at 95% capacity. Your average class size for your 5th grade would go from 25 to 29. These are efficiencies you can't gain by closing a school. It's not efficiencies you can gain just by redistricting. You need to redistrict. I think we all know that. Those have been coming and being participating in this process. You need to redistrict. But these are additional efficiencies. It's an efficient and effective use of space. I believe from reading it's consistent with the Council Rock mission and vision. There's a trade-off. There's more student transitions. There's other concerns and things that need to be considered. What I'd like to ask the board to do is when you vote to redistrict, keep in mind this is an option. And when you look at redistricting with and without 5th grade centers and see the efficiencies for yourself. Look at the impact to your programs, whether it might improve them or whether
Farling, Hudson Court, Holland, PA. Tonight the directors kicked off the Citizens Capital Planning Committee. I remember a public comment to the effect that the administration should review the sending areas where the volunteers are all coming from to ensure that all the schools were equally represented. And should any school not be equally represented, to go and recruit from among PTOs and other organizations at each of the schools. Without disparaging in any way the PTOs and all the great work that they do at the schools for the schools, I thought that was a perfectly wrong approach. I saw the mission and responsibility of the commission as making recommendations for the good of the whole district, not our advocating for our home schools. Now, as it turned out, all the schools were represented, and in fact, the committee, I feel, was pretty representative of Council Rock demographically as well. I believe the recommendations that we came up with were based on consensus reached among community, educational, and financial concerns that made sense for the district overall. I know that my own home schools, with my support in some cases, got clobbered. On a nice day, one might actually walk from my house to two of the schools that are recommended for closure, and it's likely that Northampton will lose the 24th maintenance facility as well. Now, I know that people here who break out in hives when I try to drag my private sector experience into and compare it to what can happen in the schools, but I've had the experience of being around plant closing decisions over the years, and there are a couple of things that do carry over and translate to pretty much anything. First of all, is universally true, underutilized or inefficiently utilized facilities will consume resources that cannot then be used anywhere else. They're just not gone into that hole. And second, I've never been involved in a closing that was not 3 years overdue by the time the decision finally came down. It was always a difficult decision. I've seen it. I've been right there with it. To impact workers and communities, and it can feel like a failure of planning or execution. But in the end, what's left behind in the organization is better off for the closure. There are significant challenges facing the district as a whole, starting with annual compounding multi-million-dollar increases in the pension fund requirements for years to come. Let's not make this any harder on ourselves by delaying difficult decisions.
Nancy Carroll, Newtown Borough. Today, October 9th, the new enrollments came out. We still have, since 2006, 678 less elementary students, 246 less middle school students, 578 less high school students, for a total of over 1,500 less students than we had in 2006. We still have students in trailers, even though we built 25 permanent classrooms since 2006. 12 of them are in the Northern Division. We still have $130 million of identified renovation needs. We are still talking about a Schrader report that says we have to leave 543 empty classrooms at a 90% capacity. We're still talking about capacities that are figured on regular ed sections less than what they were in their Plan Con documents. This community paid for 3 renovations since 2006, and in the Plan Con it says that Churchville will have 29 regular ed sections, and the calculation for capacity is based on 25. Goodnow, 33. The calculation is based on 32. Holland, 21. The calculation is based on 19. Because I'm a data junkie, my Schrader report is worn out, as well as all the previous documents I've accumulated over the years of attending facilities meetings on the numbers of classrooms. I know that when the Schrader did his report, we were already down 30 sections at the elementary level. So I want to know who is in those classrooms. I know there's infill. Where does it come from? It comes from small group instruction. That's where it comes from. Whether it be special ed or a math specialist or reading, they take over large classrooms, which is why the committee that I was on suggested that for efficiencies, what we need to do is right size the space for the amount of students that are using it. Nobody more than me wants special ed students, regular ed students to get their needs. I'm here to help, hopefully, the district save money, not because I'm motivated by taxes, but because I want it to go to the students. I want us to build up our technology. I want us to become a district known for technology. So in that report, last week, I stand up here and said most of the schools had full-size classroom for psychologists and counselors. And Mark said that wasn't true. He answered, Bill, that's not true. If it's not true, then the Schrader report is wrong. Who's in those full-size classrooms? I came across Welsh, which is our four biggest schools are Goodnow, Newtown, Welsh, and Churchville. Welsh is a huge school. It's second in square area to Goodnow. And it only has like one or two small-sized classrooms. So that means that every small group instruction is in a large classroom. So I went to the report to see who's in there. They have an emotional support district population, and according to the Schrader report, they have 5 classrooms for what is now 14 kids. The classrooms are District K, 3 emotional support, District 4, 5 emotional support, District 6 emotional support, an emotional support orientation room, and a social worker for emotional support using 5 classrooms, which are 14 kids. Now, if they need those 5 classrooms, let them have it. But I think that there could be some efficiencies found since there's only 14 kids in that program. As far as our work, I was on Committee 2. I wanted the board to know that on my committee in the community and in Committee 2, we had full discussions about going 6 to 8. And a lot of us favored 6 to 8, I being one of them. But we looked at the cost, and we thought to have 3 grades up, to have just 2 schools, we felt it was too big for that age group. We feel that kids in that age group need to, go out for their band, go out for their football teams, that was a very important function. And if you only had 2 6 to 8s, it would be 3/4 the size of the high schools, no matter how you would cut it. The high schools they feed it. So then we looked at, well, what if we had 4 schools? And first of all, we only have 3 now. Our smallest of those schools is the neediest in number. It has a lot of 7s on it, Richboro Middle. Both other schools are very needy in renovations. They have a high dollar amount, and we'd have to get a 4th school. We even said, well, maybe we could put the 4th school in the high school. It's not quite enough seats. It's maybe only 400 seats, but then you could have 600 at Newtown Middle, and maybe 600 at Holland and 400 at Richborough, but we knew that the district could not afford it and it was too expensive. So we traded off. Everything is a trade-off. There is pluses and cons. We traded off that so that every middle school kid, 4 years from now, would have a wonderful 21st century environment in which to go to school. And we said, how are we going to pay for this? And then that's why we started to look at places, since we're down so much enrollment, we might close schools. We were not a school closing commission. We did not go there because we wanted to go close schools. We went there because we want every child in Council Rock, when they get up to the middle school, to have a wonderful place to have their education. And I stand by those recommendations that we made. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Jason Cohen from Wrightstown. I just wanted to point out something quickly. First off, the last speaker mentioned that we're talking about building a new middle school, and we want to save money to be able to afford that. And we're talking about savings of, for instance, closing Wrightstown with $650,000. That doesn't pay for a $110 million middle school. So the other point I wanted to mention too about the last speaker is that yes, while enrollment numbers are in fact still down over the district, when we're talking about closing elementary schools, it's still kind of interesting to realize that since September enrollment numbers, we're actually up another 7 students in the elementary schools. Thank you.
Hi, Amy McIntyre of Newtown on behalf of Wrightstown Elementary. I just wanted to let you all know that we did have our community information session at Wrightstown Library on Tuesday night, and I want to let you know that it was a really fabulous event. We had 59 people from the public come out and get a little background information on the process and where things are. We had a lot of great questions that were asked by the public. We had 2 board members who were there and able to offer some insight and answer some questions, so it was a really positive experience, and our community is overwhelmingly behind our school, and we are all seeking efficiencies through this district that are fact-based and real. And when we talk about savings, we want the savings to be real. We want the savings to be money that can be used towards other things. And when you spend $10 million in 5 years to save $660,000 a year, we're leaving a lot of money on the table that could be saved as early as next year with Jenny's proposal. If we want to give it a couple years for the cultural aspects to sink in and for people to prepare, that's fine. But those savings are real savings that begin the day the program is implemented with very little cost up front. So our community likes savings. We're into it. But we want it to make sense, and we want it to be real. So we don't like talking about saving money and closing a school for the sake of keeping the 70% of the public in mind that doesn't have kids in the district, yet funds our district. You're really not keeping them in mind. They're just funding another expensive program. So to build out a school to take on our kids. So it's not a savings. And, enrollment's down 700. We're down 28 trailers with kids in them. Do the math. Average of like a 25 size classroom times 28. So we have a few more classrooms in our elementary schools, but I mean that's what happens. So we're able to bring more kids inside. That's a great thing. And come on, I mean from September to October, another 7 kids up. We all know. We all have homes. We all see them turning. We all know who's buying them. There's kids coming into this district again, now that people can sell their homes again. So it's just not the right time to close a school.
Anyone else?
Okay, so the next item on our agenda is formulation of regulations, what we've been talking about is
So I've seen the work that's been done by the administration regarding one of the charges, which is the model closing rights gap. And the general perspective that I've come to in reading that is that that analysis, while maybe not to the level of detail in terms of how many children go into each section, even at the gross level of how many children go into each school, present a result that it's not going to be a workable solution to close those. And so I question, as I hear people say, well, we haven't had a chance to look at it, truthfully, we can discuss it next week, but why would we not let the administration present it so that we would be informed of it? We could ask additional questions in the intervening week. The community would be informed of it. And in my opinion, if it's presented and a sufficient number of board members look at it tonight and say it doesn't support or it refutes the discussion that you can close rights down, then we could potentially tonight put an end to that and move on to the next task.
I'm gonna apologize to the board. I'm having difficulty seeing you, so if you want to lean forward, if you'd like to speak, I did give you a
Sure.
It's hard for me to see.
perhaps we refrain from coming tonight. And I don't know if that's a viable solution, and I don't know if we want to necessarily do it, but perhaps we refrain from comment. The presentation is given to the public, the presentation is presented to us. I think there have been at least 50 hours put into it. We get the next one next week, and we'll discuss them at the same time next week. I don't know if that's, I'm just trying to understand from people who are concerned what would be the fun.
And that's my question on this, which is, at the summary level, the administration has come forward and said, candidly, it probably is not going to work. And so to say, go invest more time, if the car has hit the tree and the engine is all, and there's fluid all over the ground, pulling the car off the tree and saying to somebody, crank the engine, see if it starts, is silly. So if the administration has done a high level or even a first level pass and finds that it doesn't work, is our charge to them tonight, thanks for showing us that even at the highest level you present to us tonight that it doesn't work, go back and keep going. I would think we spoke last time about the limited resources we have to do it, the difference between strategic and tactical efforts that our administration is to do. And that's, I will be candid, I don't have a problem. The item is produced, it's a product of the school district. I don't have a problem presenting it or sending it to anybody because it's a public document. We talked about transparency in the past. So now we have something the administration has done. We could sit in the audience if we want. But then let us walk away from it and say, do more, do less, stop, whatever. But to say, don't show it now because maybe you can make it better, although you already think it won't work, maybe you can make it work if you just put more time into it.
So, Jerry, this is my concern. This presentation relies a lot on decision insight. And I went, about 2 weeks ago. It's not my thing, that kind of device. Alright? But I spent a good deal of time with it. And one of the first things I found when I clicked on each of the school names was that the number of children in each of the schools assigned to those schools was different than the attendance number. And in all, when we went through each school back and forth, the totality of the district was off by a small number, about 100 kids. Tonight when I came, I said to Mr. Klein, before you began using Decision Insight to move kids out of one building to another building, did you go in, and I emailed that, my finding to all of you earlier, I said to Mr. Klein, did you change those initial numbers so that when you move people around, the little dots that represent our children, around in the program, it would be accurate? Mr. Klein said no, he did not change those numbers, but he felt that because you were moving boundaries, it made no difference. The total number turned out to be close to the same. So, I'm not sure I understand that. So, for me, I'm happy that the community can have any piece of information that we work with. I've always been open in my views and what I think and how I've come to my conclusions and what my opinions are. That's why so many of these ladies out here are really mad at me. I want the numbers that go out to be correct because there has been so much animosity and so much indecision and so many people spending hours and hours figuring this number and that number. Unless I've had time to really go through this and I've had the support of others who are good at this and manipulate numbers regularly with me, I have concerns. So we can give people anything, but when it's coming to them from the school board, I want to know that the numbers are absolutely accurate and the way we used them was correct. So that's my hesitation, that we add to the misinformation as opposed to add to the properness of the discussion. So I don't care, but that's really where I am on it.
I think if we take a little extra time, it won't kill us. We're not voting supposedly until November 6th. If it's moving up, I don't know that yet. Nobody told me. Okay? But if we're not voting till November 6th, we have time.
Other board members? Let me just go back and say that's solely my concern. I don't think it's fair to the public. I didn't expect this to be on the agenda tonight. It wasn't on the agenda tonight. Elizabeth Lee was day before this scheduled meeting. And my opinion, this meeting was set. We're not going to debate for us to hear from the public. I think the public should have access to everything that they want to access in this board meeting. Again, I want to make sure when people are speaking, I still hear incorrect information. I don't want to feed that in. That's my concern. I don't think it hurts us at all. I'm not asking for a month. I'm not asking for 3 months. I'm asking for one single meeting.
Tonight, the most egregious piece of misinformation we've heard already from the public is that we plan on building a junior high school for $100 million. All right? That's crazy. That's crazy. That's just crazy talk. So as far as I'm concerned, there is so much misinformation out there and put on television. It goes through the community. Even with my good teacher voice, you can't hear me?
You're not yelling at the people in their houses with the TVs that are not working. That's what's
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Just saying.
It's my opinion that this presentation is not the presentation of this board. It's my opinion that this presentation, that we've asked for is a presentation from the administration. And if the administration is confident it's a presentation ready to present it, I'm going to carry it. I don't think that it is
So I want that conversation to take place amongst us and within the community. But I think the piece that's missing is a vital part to that as well. And so that is where I
That, and that's why I asked the question. So it was a two-part thing, and I think there's some truth in that piece of it. The other, so if it is the will of the majority of this board that we, and I'm trying to, I would like to see it tonight, but I am respectful of the fact that there are board members that have concerns. But I guess what I don't know is how do we keep that, how do we keep the date? We've already missed one meeting. Now we are, if we choose to go this path, and this will be another week that the public is, that we have said to the public, we will provide X, Y, and Z to you, and we have not provided that to the public. How do we keep the date that we said and continue to give the public enough time to digest so that we can go?
And I don't know that we're gonna get the redistricting report, I mean, I have to digest it before, what Supervisor Morrow said, he's doing the work really up until the Thursday. So just to be clear about next week's presentation, we may have the same concern because the information may not get to us until next Wednesday or Thursday. So, I don't know where you wanna go with that, but, you know what I mean? It's the same issue.
I hear what you're saying, I just, I don't think that that's a very good process. Because that means, some position where decision that we have to be something. It's almost impossible to tell them that.
Right, I don't think you're expecting
I mean, as an example today, we got a slide that had PowerPoint slide presentation that I received is no router in that law. No narrative, and I had no idea what really substantiated that presentation. So if we're in the same position next week, everyone wants to move forward, and we're working on a complete day. To me, that's unacceptable. Again, that's not.
Well, the presentation is made for the purposes of giving a chance to digest your questions, not immediate decision. At least that's
For me, I think it's unfortunate we don't have to hold a poll, but it's understandable that it is in a perfect world. I'd like to see them, and as I've said in prior meetings, I'm not prepared to make a decision on any schools until I see a complete redistricting and pulls off all the trailers looks like. And I think the key to understanding if it's possible to consolidate schools, and not even saying Wrightstown specifically, I don't know why we're still there, but consolidate schools until we see what the capacity of the buildings look like, what the use of rooms and class sizes are going to hold in redistricting and what trailers looks like. I think that will lead then to the natural recommendation from the administration around after we've done that, do we look to consolidate schools? I don't necessarily have any issues having the administration share that work tonight, but I'm certainly not going to be prepared to comment on it. And then that being said, I think we have to look at the financial implications of a full plan before we make any decision. So, I'm happy to hear a presentation, but I think we need the public to understand that that's all it is in a vacuum presentation about what it looks like if we were to close one particular school. And the reality is, I don't think we're ready to do it.
I think we spent about 20 minutes or so. Can you hear me? We spent about 20 minutes or so now just discussing this. I don't know how long the presentation is, but we could have a presentation, I think, by now. I came here tonight at a great sacrifice to hear the presentation. So, and I believe people in the audience have also. So my suggestion is, let's hear it unless Mr. Klein believes it's not in the best interest to have a presentation tonight. Otherwise, I say let's hear it. The fact that board members have not reviewed the information, so be it. My understanding is we are going to be observers as opposed to participants, so we can digest the information, come up with the questions later, rather than come up with the questions tonight and ask about it. We don't have to have reviewed the information ahead of time. So
yes, I have a lot of work to do. I'm doing it, but I did come here for a presentation. I suggest we just, let's hear it.
I think that's really important to have a presentation on Mr. Klein, and I think we may want to sit in the audience because we're going to be, Mrs. Tyler, we've received a number of emails regarding this, so we have been asked. Okay, well, we know.
No, I understand.
We know there's a sound issue. I'm going to say it one more time.
Speak into your mic.
I mean, seriously, if you can hear me, we know there's a sound issue, and we are working on it. I'm sorry. Okay, Mrs. Sexton, they heard you.
Fred, okay? Good. Presentation that you're going to see tonight is based on information and work that we have done as a cumulative group, as our cabinet team, myself most particularly, and we've worked a lot with the program called Decision Insight. I recognize on Mrs. Sexton's point, but there may be some small anomalies in Decision Insight. We've been working with them to get upgrades on that work, and we should have new enrollment data in there. But the way that I check this to make sure it's right is that the total number of students that are in the changed boundaries is within 2 students of the students we have right now in Council Rock. So those numbers check. If there's a variance between 1 or 2 kids across boundaries, a lot of it has to do with just how you draw the boundaries, and the people that have worked with Decision Insight know that if you're not careful about drawing it along the lines, sometimes you'll lose a kid here or there. But for accuracy's sake, we're within a variance of 2 kids across the entire school district. And that was based on numbers that weren't exactly the October data. They were closer to the data that was in September. So it troubles me sometimes to hear that the information I'm going to give you is not accurate. There's nothing that I have here that is not from either a capacity study that we received from the Schrader Group Architects on the 30th of September, and I apologize, that should be 2013, or the enrollment projections that are part of the Decision Insight Group. We didn't change anything. We didn't put anything into this. We simply manipulated the information in the Decision Insight program, which is what it's for, and tried to do what the board asked us to do, which was show you why the Wrightstown redistricting would not work, or show us if it would work. And that was what I heard very clearly when I did the first presentation to the board and to the community. You told us that it doesn't work, now show us. And so our task was to do that. A couple board members gave me some information that I was hoping to put into the work. We did it right up until 10 o'clock last night. I sent them the first draft to the board. We added a couple things today that show a little bit more about the actual capacity in sections to school. So now you can see not only the total numbers, but the sections. So this is the 10-1-14 data. The people that came to the microphone noticed that on October 1st, 14, we have 5,430 students. It's a little bit bigger than what we had 9-8-14, and it's about 22 students. It's exactly 22 students more than we had October of 2013. It doesn't say anything towards major trend data, except that it means we're about stable from one year to the next. I do very much apologize because my back is to all of you. I'm talking this way. So if your face is behind my back or something like that, I can't tell. But I hope you won't do that for a while at least. So this is the way the boundary lines are drawn in Council Rock right now. People will say to me often, well, why does that look that way? Why is Holland split up? Why is Goodnoe split up? And the simple answer to that is Holland is split, Newtown looks like the triangle because we built boundary lines around new schools or new developments. So Hills and Northampton is that one isolated island out there between the Holland group. That came online late. Hillcrest wasn't able to take it, so you see a Holland anomaly. You see some anomalies like a neighborhood across from Richboro going to Churchville. So much of that is a result of redistricting and trying to make logical lines at illogical places in Council Rock. But this is what the majority, this is what the current lines look like, and this is what the current numbers are based on the October 1st data. If you were to take Wrightstown Elementary School off, and again, I just have to say, you can change these lines anywhere you want to make different shapes. The work we did was to make the shapes as logical as possible across boundary lines. I want to caution people that are looking at this. There is nothing here etched in stone. This is a hypothetical, again, a hypothetical only of how you might change this. But it was our best effort to make logical boundary decisions and to put kids in school to the best of our ability without overtaxing any single school, and to try to redistrict across the district to take care of certain things like an under-enrollment in Holland, and to look at various things. So to say that we didn't do the modular reduction is not exactly true. We looked hard at whether we could, as we were redistricting, figure out ways to pull modulars offline at the same time. And that was, as I go boundary by boundary with you, that will be some of the things that we will talk about. The problem with Decision Insight and the problem with the presentation is it isn't a white paper or a treatise. It is exactly this, a presentation. And the only way to do an effective presentation in PowerPoint, I believe, is to tell you, not to read to you. And so what we did was draw boundary lines with the intent to come here and say, this is what our thinking was over 30 plus hours of work in the Decision Insight program about why we drew a line, how it worked, and what it actually resulted, and why we didn't draw a line here or there or in other places. So I want to go through each of the individual boundaries for you and just explain to some extent what we did, why we did it, and how it actually works out. Here are the boundary lines with the numbers of the students in there. Again, there will be comments about the Schrader study, but I find that the Schrader study is accurate in the total number of classrooms that it has, and that's what I'll talk about tonight. In each of the red spots on the map, the total enrollment there suggests that our numbers are a little over what the Schrader 100% capacity is. Not a huge amount. In each of those two, South Finestone and Newtown, about 103%, but still over the 100% capacity amount. The rest of the black numbers show a capacity that's right within the 90 to 100%. And in the two places, Hillcrest and Richboro, they fit the existing structure of the school, but with modulars, not without modulars. Let's take a look at South Finestone first. You can see that when we built the boundaries around South Finestone, we did a couple things that I know people aren't going to like it where they live in place, but we were just looking at it hypothetically in logical terms. So we took a little bit of that carve out there for Newtown, and we took the rest of the Newtown Township folks and moved them to Newtown Elementary. And in turn, we captured back a group of kids that were in the Wrightstown area right here and drew our line on a fairly logical place along this road here to capture this catchment area from Wrightstown and bring them to South Finestone. South Finestone then grows to 704 kids. The sections now, even though this number is a little bit different, 710, I couldn't quite figure out why I was getting 710 when I drew that map line. That's the only variance in the numbers, but it's a little bit over what that 7.4 was. When you draw the line in Decision Insight, you actually draw this line and then you have Decision Insight create a report, and it tells you exactly how many kids based on the line that you're drawing. Then you can capture that number into a actual chart, but for whatever reason I couldn't get it to give me 704. So the variance is a little, but it's right there. It yields 29 sections, and this is what Decision Insight will do for me. It will give me the 2014 sections based on the line that I've drawn. So you can see the number of kids that are in that catchment area that we redrew and the number of sections that we have. And here's an interesting example of where you put a larger amount of kids into this school, but you actually resulted in not that many more sections. One more section, so you have 704 to 10 kids in that school, but only a total variance of 29 versus 28 sections. The projections Decision Insight have done are based on the 2013-14 data. They're updating that data now with 14-15, but again, I would expect the variance not to be great because the numbers in elementary haven't grown a great deal, but you can see that at least consistent with Council Rock, Saul Feinstein is level, relatively level from 15 to 17. So with 29 sections, this is the Schrader capacity, and I will say to you that there is now at Saul Feinstein 2 less modulars, 1 nice addition here for an office building, and 1 extra classroom. So there are 29 full-size classrooms at Saul Feinstein. 2 of them right now are designated for learning support here and there. But there's a need for 29 full sections there when we move those kids to Saul Feinstein. So your 100% capacity at Saul Feinstein is pretty much 100% capacity with the ability to move or the need to capture some of these spaces for full-size classrooms, not for learning support classrooms. This is the Newtown catchment area. Again, some of the places around here, like Newtown Place and around Swamp Road, will go to Goodnoe based on just a logical draw. I think we brought this right up 413, and then it caught the rest of the Wrightstown catchment area except for this small part of Northampton Township. At Newtown, the total number of kids that drew there were 896. You can see where that area now. It caught the rest of Newtown Township up here, so it took some kids from Saul Feinstein. It grabbed the kids here, and you can see it's a large attendance area, and it will be some significant travel to the Newtown Elementary School here. The projections here, again, you have these projected sections. The total number of sections then, based on the catchment area, will be 37. The actual sections in 2014 are with 666 kids is 28. So you can see there's an addition of 9 sections here. And here's what the actual projections look like based on the Decision Insight projection model. And again, it shows a relatively stable enrollment area, a little bit of a bump from 14 to 15, and then a stabilization at that amount. Newtown Elementary School has 35 full-size classrooms. Of those 35, 2 of them, and actually in this report it should be this classroom and this classroom, are used for the multi-handicap program. So we have the classroom in here, and then we have a lot of the support areas, equipment, OT, PT, other kinds of things operating out of this classroom. But in total, there are 35 full-time classrooms, including these. As you saw here, there are 37 sections. So at Newtown, we're over by a couple sections in that catchment area that we drew. This is the Goodnoe area. And again, we took this area here and added it to Goodnoe and came up with 848 kids in a total Goodnoe sending area. There's a projected, and here's why I do have to show you with my apologies. 848 is very different than 808. But when Decision Insight pulls this number together, we add 41 kids who come to Goodnoe Elementary School for the Autistic Support Program. They are not captured within the attendance area, but they actually add to the enrollment because they come from a variety of places in the school district to become part of our Autistic Support Program at Goodnoe. So while that number shows 848, it represents 808 808 students that are in the Goodnoe attendance area, and then 40 kids actually that come as part of the autistic support program. So that's why that number is a little different. But here's what that number looks like in terms of projected students and projected sections versus what the actuals are right now. Again, the variance in sections is not high, 32 versus 31. This is what concerns me about Goodnoe, and it reflects some building that's happening in that Goodnoe area. The Decision Insight projections go from 847 to 896 to 926 in that area. I'm not quite sure why that big jump comes, but I do know that they've come online with the townhouse development that will be part of the Newtown Swim Club, and I suspect that some of that is a result of that additional development that's coming in. Again, there are 40 full-size classrooms. 8 of those classrooms are designated for either LS or AS. Right now you have 32 classrooms for your new catchment area, so you'd be able to accommodate these 8 classrooms that are part of the learning support and autistic support program at Goodnoe Elementary School. Again, my caution in this elementary catchment area is these projections. And so someone would say you could have taken more kids from Newtown and moved them over to Goodnoe, and that's absolutely correct. But if these projections are even close to being correct, we're going to be over, and we're going to be over in that building, and we're going to be adding sections in 16 and 17. That's the danger of putting 100% capacity in schools. And even though it's possible to grab some of these classrooms back, very possible, the problem is if you're adding another 30 or 40 kids each year, you have the potential of actually gobbling many of them up. Those are the 3 detailed areas that I did with actually the maps and the actual projections. I can do these with the rest, but I just want to go through, again, what we tried to do here to make sense of things. So we looked at the Rolling Hills attendance area, and it will make sense when you see Hillcrest and some of the other areas here. But one of the things we tried to do to again, cascade enrollment around is, and the favorite place in Council Rock to kind of move around is Newtown Crossing. They've been up to Rolling Hills, they've been back to Goodnoe, they've been up and back. If you grabbed all of Newtown Crossing, which is this whole area here, you move Rolling Hills up into the high 400s or early 500s, and that's too high for Rolling Hills. When you try to move some of these other areas out, you overburden either Hillcrest or Holland to make that work. The catchment area that we've drawn for Rolling Hills makes sense in this way. At 314 students, you'd have a very reasonable chance to pull off the majority of your modulars in this catchment area. That's the only elementary boundary we really moved around to see if we could actually create a boundary that actually came without modulars. Hillcrest we actually grabbed some more to actually put 469 kids in Hillcrest. It's not too different than what the actual numbers are in Hillcrest. We gained some and we lost some. And the reason we did that was to create a larger Holland Elementary School catchment area. Everyone that looks at Holland understands it is below utilization, and to actually put the correct utilization in Holland, you need to gobble up a pretty large amount of space, most of that coming from, in fact, all of it coming from Hillcrest. So a new Holland Elementary School area would look like this. A lot of these kids coming from Hillcrest, obviously. It becomes a logical attendance area. And if I go back to Hillcrest, so too does Hillcrest. A logical attendance area, and it takes just a little bit from the Rolling Hills area. So those are the 2, as we cascaded down, the 2 attendance areas that we actually turned around to try to make those 2 areas make sense. Again, in so doing, Hillcrest still is a school that is sized with modulars. You can't bring Hillcrest down to a size where it could potentially take off the modulars at the back. Holland is sized to actually fit the totals that are in there within the 90 to 100% capacity that the Schrader Group has. Richboro and Churchville right now rest in the 90 to 100% capacity, so I haven't done anything with either of those 2 areas. Adding more kids or trying to move them around only exacerbates what is already the issue here. In both cases, those schools are operating at their 90 to 100% capacity, right in that band. Churchville has no modulars, Richboro does. And so moving any kids into Richboro, I'd love to move them out, but if I move them here, I put modulars back in Rolling Hills. If I move them up here, I'm into the Newtown area. I move them down to Churchville, that school is at the 90% capacity. The only place to move them would be Welsh, but we've already taken this part of the Northampton Township that's part of Wrightstown, and we've moved those over to Welsh too. So they're right now in their 90% capacity band too. Again, you can look at all of these capacities and say you can or can't. I heard someone come to the microphone and say there were 5 emotional support classrooms at Welsh. There aren't. There are 3 identified emotional support classrooms, and I think there are sections right now that only allow for those in 2 other learning support classrooms. So while it may be identified in the Schrader capacity study as at an optimal level, this is where we would put emotional support, this is where we would put learning support. As we grow in any of our buildings, we gobble up those spaces that are full-time classrooms to put a first, a second, or a third grade class that splits at its section level. As was mentioned today, I think it is worthy to go back and look at the charge of the capital plan to the planning committee. As I talked to the chairs of that committee last night and looked at some of the work we've been doing together, they reminded me that these are the things that we were talking about. And 3 and 4 most particularly are the ones that guided them as they did their work. I do apologize. I wish we had had enough time to pull a full modular study together too. I commit that I'll have that to you and hopefully early next week, at least some initial ideas that would be the catalyst for removing the majority of the modulars in Council Rock. But the charge that was given to the administration and the one that we vigilantly went after over the last week was what would it look like if we closed Wrightstown Elementary School? Again, within a lot of different hypotheticals and changing boundaries, you could do a lot of those things, but in any of the things that we tried, it just moved issues and it moved enrollment from one place to the other, and that was the concerns we had as we drew those boundaries.
Because thankfully Matt is working on, Mr. Frederickson is working on the sound and he believes he has a fix, but he needs a small break. So there'll be a 5-minute recess. We'll resume at 8:58.
Could I just make one quick comment? I really want to thank Matt Frederickson and the team of people that work here. They've been here all day trying to make this venue work. It may not be perfect and we may not be getting sound out exactly as we want, but as you can see, the amount of effort and time that goes into setting up this kind of program for a live feed out as well as the tape feed was extraordinary. So Matt, on behalf of the board, I'm sure I speak for them all, thank you. And please offer our thanks to your team to put this all together today.
2. Check 3. Check 3. Check 4. Check. Check 4. Check 5. Check 5. Check 6. Check 6. Check 9. Check 10. Check 10. Check 12.
Pretty soon I'm just going to talk without a mic. Oh, there I am. Hello, everyone. I would like to make sure that everyone's fully informed of the situation with the sound and what has been recommended to me and what I think is a good idea, but certainly, as always, open for conversation among the board. The sound issues that we are having are consistent, and while they may have been improved, they're still not able to be completely fixed. Additionally, even though we're recording this, apparently the recorded sound will not be excellent either. So in that vein, and because we've had a presentation where we've just said we've all just heard this information, We have an email address where we can take questions. Unless there's something overriding that somebody really wants to say tonight, I suggest we continue this conversation next week. Is anyone opposed? Because only people can hear us, or potentially the people here. Are you in agreement? Mrs. Sexton, any issues? Okay, anybody else? Anybody on this end? Okay, I don't want to limit your opportunity for public comment either, so I'm going to officially open it, but I'm also going to say to you, we will start next week's meeting with open public comment, and if you have questions about the presentation, or really frankly about any of this, it's capitalplanning@crsc.org. It's the same email address it has been. It would be very beneficial for you to email them into us. And perhaps we can put a statement on the website tomorrow morning. I don't know if the board thinks that's a good idea, but that we had some trouble with sound tonight. There was a presentation made. And if you have questions, please email us. And then we can take it under advisement. Perhaps next week you should redo a summary of what you did tonight and do the rest of the presentation. So we end up back in the same place. Right. Is there anyone who would, public comment? So, my official statement. Public comment is an opportunity for members of the public to address the board. We would ask that you limit your comments to no longer than 3 minutes. Please consider the fact that there may be young children in the audience or watching this broadcast on CRTV. It is an opportunity for the board, is the opportunity to address the board without interruptions. We would like the members of our community to have an equal opportunity, and while the board welcomes your ideas and will consider them in deliberating an issue, we may not respond to your questions. If anybody would like to speak tonight, please approach the mic and state your name and your town and your comment. Okay. And we do apologize for the sound issues.
Nancy Carroll, Newtown Borough. I'm really confused about the Schrader thing, because even though he said it says there's 5 classrooms for Maureen Welsh, and you said, well, there's really only 3, and 2 of them can be captured back, then why aren't those 2s in the calculation for capacity? If the psychologists really aren't in full-size classroom, then why aren't they in, I'm really confused, and I think the thing that's really hard for us that are on the committees, you can put your computer at 400% and still not read the wording in the schematics on the Schrader report. So when I wanted to know what classes are in which classrooms, I often went to like a PlanCon document because it's much clearer to read than the Schrader report. And the problem that you had with the special ed kids at Goodnow, our group also had, because you had to put on the whole elementary. You couldn't just work in the Northern Division because those kids come from the South. So when people say, Group 2 was missing numbers, that's why they were missing numbers, because the it didn't dawn on me until a week after we made our presentation why we had those anomalies in the report, but I want you to know, as far as process goes, it was very difficult for some of us to use. We had no training. I don't think the boards had training on it, and I think that was a large gap in getting understanding from Decision Insight. So I hope you'll explain sometime in the future, and I don't want to put in a question because, thanks by the way for putting on the elementary boundaries as they are now. I've only asked 5 times. So in the future, how the number of regular ed classrooms that are used in the calculations for the complete capacities are done when you do an existing study in 2010 when we've already lost 30 sections. And when they differ from what the PlanCon says is the regular ed section, and when you say they could bubble back who is doing those efficiencies? And how is that process going to work? And that's my big concern. Thank you.
Amy McIntyre, Newtown, on behalf of Wrightstown Elementary. I would just like to say, in light of the sound issues and the fact that we lost a meeting in early September and the fact that we don't have motions, which were supposed to be identified on the 20th, I think November 6th, if we hold to it, really forcing the issue. We're finally starting to get some concrete data on some things you've asked administration to look at, some things you've identified that you might want to consider, and to not give this the time that it requires in a discussion is silly. So I think you need to reconsider your timeline.
Hello, my name is Kristen Schrader Marcel, and I live in Wrightstown. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank all of you that supported showing us the presentation tonight. I specifically came to see it, and I understand that some of you didn't want to comment, and I appreciate that. But I really do appreciate just seeing it. If there are some things that need to change, or if there were errors, that's perfectly understandable. But I just wanted to commend the board members that supported showing the public that, and supported transparency in some of these numbers. I do look forward to seeing the trailer data and presentation next week. As someone who graduated from Council Rock, even though it was a while ago, I remember the trailers like the entire time that I've been here. And now I live here again, despite me leaving, and I can't believe they're still here because I think they were supposed to be temporary. So I just wanted to mention that I really look forward to seeing that presentation next week, and hope that you'll give, I guess, the thought around just the security. I know that school shootings haven't really happened in this area, but it's something that I'm very concerned about. I know there are some issues with mold. I'm going to do some additional research in that area, but I just wanted to thank the board and thank everyone for coming tonight.
Okay, I'm going to, unless anybody else has an issue, I'm going to call this meeting as adjourned, and next week's meeting will be at Chancellor. It's a regular session of the board meeting, and I think we will, at that point, maybe discuss the 24th, because I understand and supported and agreed with many people on the board who wanted to come out to the communities, but if it doesn't work for us to hear you and you to hear us, and doesn't work for the community to hear us, is not really a good option for us. So I just throw that out for the board to think about in the next week, and maybe next week we can talk about the venue for the 23rd, thank you.
The October agenda.
Closer. Into the mic.
The October agenda is busy. There's a lot on it. So I might suggest that we move that meeting at least a little earlier to avoid a midnight closing.
Does anyone object to starting at 7? I can't see, sorry. Is Mr. Foster shaking his head or no? Anybody on this end? Mr. Bilek, you okay with 7? Okay. Everybody's good with 7, so we'll announce next week we'll start at 7.
I think that would help.
So, help you guys too. Nobody wants to do it. Okay. I do want to thank again Matt for his efforts today. I'm sorry it was challenging. I apologize to those people at home. And Fred Bauer, they really made a valiant effort, and we do appreciate that. And we'll look forward to seeing everyone next week.